All right, welcome back to MGD 111. We're going to start looking at filters today. We've looked at a few filters in the past. We looked at some of your basic blur and sharpen filters, very practical filters that enhance the image in a very realistic way. We're going to take a look at some more interesting ones that we have a chance to use here. But let's start under the blur menu here, under filter. By the way, I have the picture girl and dog 2 here if you want to follow along. So let's go under blur. We use the regular blur and blur more, but there's some really cool ones down here at the bottom. There's motion blur, which is kind of a cool thing. It doesn't look like it's doing much here, but as I move the distance of the pixels, you'll see that it's causing this picture to look like it's going side to side. One of the cool things that we have here is this little wheel. Sort of looks like the iPod click wheel, if you remember those. Pretty old school, huh? And by the way, we can move this out of the way if there's a particular part of the picture we want to focus on. So you can see that it allows us to change the angle at which this is moving. Now it looks kind of strange on this picture, but imagine we have a picture of a car or something. We can make it look like it's in motion. And we get a chance to preview it and everything, so we can play around easily with the distance of the blur, etc., etc. I'm going to click cancel there. We don't want to apply these filters on top of each other too much, by the way. You're going to have trouble seeing what each one does. As fun as that's going to be, do that on your own time. Let's go to blur and radial blurs, the next one I want to show you here. And we have a similar thing here where we have this little guideline here, and we have two different kinds of blurs that are shown in here. We have zoom, and you can see it sort of looks like the Star Wars hyperspace effect, or we have spin. As you can see, it rotates it. We can affect how much it zooms or spins based on this little slider. Now you'll notice there's not a preview box on this one. This is one of the most complex filters as far as how long it takes to render the image. So there's a couple things that you need to be aware of. We can affect how detailed this blur is and how smooth it is by using draft quality, good quality, or best quality. When you're just testing out the effect, I suggest using draft to try to figure out exactly where we want to apply this particular filter. So I'm just going to take a guess here. I'm going to use draft 40 as the amount, 40 watts, just kind of 40 units of zoom. And you'll see it looks like we're zooming out of the middle of the picture. Kind of strange. Almost looks like we're running towards them. Kind of an interesting effect, but not very useful. But let's try this. Let's go back to filter, blur, radial blur, and we can move the little center of where we focus that blur. So, and again, since we don't have a preview, we just have to sort of guess and try it out. So I'm going to move it up and to the left a little bit, and let's click OK, and let's see what happens here. Hey, now it's kind of zooming in on her face. Now that's sort of a neat effect, isn't it? You can see how we can try to pinpoint a particular area. With practice, you can get pretty good at doing that. So let's undo, Command-Z, and once again we're going to go back. If we like where that blur point is, I'm going to go to blur, radial. I'm going to move it just a little bit more to the left here. And if we think we like the effect there and the amount, we can click best or good this time and click it. And you'll see it takes a while to render. Again, this is one of those, it's a lot of trial and error, unfortunately, but there we go. Now, isn't that a pretty cool effect? We're zooming right in on her eye. So you can see that we can create some pretty cool effects with that one. So again, let's undo, and let's go back here, blur, radial. This time we're going to switch it to spin. And again, we have, we can affect how much spin takes place on this. So I'm going to click OK, because I know I got it in the right place at least. It's going to zoom right around her eye. The cool thing is it doesn't reset that particular spot, so if you at least found the focus spot for it, that'll work. And there we go. Hey, that's a pretty neat effect too, isn't it? Now, that might be that I like the amount of blur there, but I'm losing too much of the picture. Just like we could with our previous blur filters, if we go to immediately after applying it, by the way, we can only do this immediately after we apply it, go to Edit, Fade, Radial Blur. It allows us to make this effect a little more transparent and allow some of the original picture to show through. If we go all the way down to 0, we have the original photo. If we go up to 100, we have the complete blur. But somewhere in between, sometimes there's kind of a cool effect going on in there. So play around with that. It's a pretty neat filter. I'm going to click cancel there. One other thing that you should be aware of, you may recall in our filters, anytime that we have applied a filter and we go to this menu, the very top option is going to be Command F, which is the last filter that you used. That's all well and good, but we need to be aware that when we're working with a filter like this one, where we have several different adjustments that we can make, we adjusted the type of blur, the quality of it, the amount of it. Anytime that we use Command F on one of those filters, it applies that exact same effect. It doesn't allow us to go back in and change it. So if you want to apply the radial blur to another picture, but we want to use it perhaps in a more subtle fashion or a different location, we need to actually just go to Filter and pull down to the regular blur menu. I know that's inconvenient, but think what we used to do, 25 years ago before we had Photoshop. We didn't do this stuff. So you're a very lucky person to be in possession of this amazing technology. So let's undo that, and we're going to come back and take a look at some additional filters.